I don't think anyone really wins in a trade war. Tariffs protect Americans from one thing and one thing only, and that's lower prices.
Back and forth between tariffs and between the two countries, and I've got the perfect guy to talk about it. His name is David Clement, Policy Director for the Consumer Choice Center, based in Ontario. David, great to have you on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So the president is now threatening additional tariffs, essentially because of the wildfire smoke that drifted into the United States. Do you view this as a serious negotiating position, or is this simply adding another layer to a very tense trade dispute?
I think the prospect of tariffs because of the wildfire are really silly. It's not a very serious argument in terms of the overall problem of wildfires. I mean, as we're speaking now, there are wildfires in the Pacific Northwest that are causing advisories in Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and throughout the Canadian West. What's more serious here is the 50% tariffs in response to accusations of American businesses in the automotive sector, the dairy sector, and the alcohol sector being treated unfairly. I think what the Trump administration has put forward is a pretty serious escalation in terms of what the impact could be on Americans, because some of the Canadian goods that are impacted in that 50% are things that maybe are a little more trivial, like Canadian whiskey, like Crown Royal or Canadian Club, but more seriously, lumber, paper. These are core inputs for America's housing construction. If you make that 50% more expensive, Americans are going to be in a world of pain. And that will be entirely because of a decision from the Trump administration, not because of anything Canada has done specifically in regards to lumber, which would be really unfortunate given how many Americans are struggling to pay rent or find a home.
Yeah, let's talk about the Trump administration's, I guess, allegations. Fundamentally, what do they believe Canada is doing unfairly when it comes to trade? Can you break it down for us?
Yep. So on alcohol, several Canadian provinces pulled U.S. alcohol from liquor store shelves in response to the initial tariffs and kind of the initiation of the trade war. So that is the one grievance. Two is the way in which American dairy is treated. Canada has a very, very high tariff rate, anywhere from 150 to 300% on imports for what we call supply managed goods. That's milk, cheese, chicken, turkey, and eggs. And that really leads them.
They're trying to defend their own dairy farmers.
Oh, yes, to the expense of all Canadian consumers. Supply management, the program is an absolute disaster in Canada that inflates the cost of those core food items for Canadians. While Canada is in its own cost of living crisis and record number of Canadians are lining up at food banks, we artificially inflate the price of these core food items. So it certainly doesn't make any sense to have this type of high tariff on imports for core food items. And then there is also the automotive complaint, which was largely in response to counter tariffs and kind of the tit for tat response in the auto sector, which again is a disaster for Americans because the North American auto market is so intertwined. You have individual pieces of cars that cross the border between Detroit and Windsor. As much as 8 times, $1 billion worth of automotive trade crosses the bridge every day. And so to try and tariff that going across the border, let's say each time, would just be a disaster for American consumers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is one of our closest allies when it comes to trade. There's so many goods that are passed across those border lines. But President Trump argues that, listen, tariffs are leverage. They bring countries to the negotiating table. They ultimately produce better results when it comes to these trade deals, better results for American workers. Do you see any evidence of these tariffs accomplishing that?
No, I don't think anyone really wins in a trade war. Tariffs, generally speaking, protect Americans from one thing and one thing only, and that's lower prices, because they decrease competition and artificially inflate the cost of imports. And so, no, I don't believe that anybody wins in a trade war. I think that the heat needs to be dialed down significantly. A perfect scenario would be the federal government in Canada and the Trump administration rehashing out the USMCA and actually getting the deal closer to zero on as many goods as humanly possible, because this is the greatest trading relationship in the world. There is no reason for it to be upended. It should be strengthened and encouraged because we are both better off because of free trade between our two countries.
Yeah, and the consumers as well on both sides.
Absolutely.
David Clement, thank you so much for your perspective. We appreciate you.